Hi, welcome to the Beauty Authority. I'm Tatiana Bido, Director of Aesthetic Content. And today we're talking about hyperpigmentation, melasma, discoloration, and why it's so bad in the summer. And today I have with me Dr. Blair Murphy-Rose, founder of Skincare Junkie, and she's going to answer all of our questions about hyperpigmentation and melasma in the summer. Hi, Dr. Rose.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Welcome to the Beauty Authority. And this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because even as I was getting ready to talk to you today, I was putting my makeup on and just those spots that bother me the most are so prominent right now. It's getting hotter outside. Why does melasma or hyperpigmentation flare up in the summer, even when we're wearing sunscreen all day?
Yeah, it's a good question. When I was in training 10 years ago, even then, there were patients I would say, I think heat is triggering it. And back then, we didn't have the data. Now we know that it's not just UV induced, although that is a huge major player here, but it actually can be heat induced. So, that, of course, is very difficult to avoid, particularly if you live in some of these warmer climates and certainly seasonally.
Yeah, I've noticed even when I'm taking a pizza out of the oven, if I go look in the mirror, I can see my spots even darker. So,
It's
makes sense.
inflammation driven. So UV will do it, but melasma is an inflammatory skin condition. And we know that any form of inflammation in those who have a propensity to develop melasma, which is so many, you have more likely to activate the process. And it can be very frustrating.
And are there certain types of sunscreen we should be using if we know we're prone to dark spots like this?
Absolutely. So, first of all, just use the sunscreen, right? Sunscreen, sun protection, all the different measures will be your best friend because if you are developing melasma or any form of hyperpigmentation, you are so prone to, the effects from the sun. So, that's very important. But which sunscreen to use? So, use a sunscreen, period. Find one that you like, and that's the one you should use. But the very best ones will be a mineral sunscreen. So, containing things like zinc oxide or titanium dioxide. Those are the two mineral active ingredients in sunscreen available in the United States.
And then should you put it on or apply it in a certain way or just all over coverage and protection? Should I be putting it on my melasma mustache even thicker?
Well, you should really just make sure you're getting that adequate protection everywhere. So we talk about 2 finger lengths for the full face, a little bit more to bring it down onto the neck, which is so often neglected. And if we're talking about melasma, we're really focusing on these areas, but sun protection everywhere, of course, is so important. It's really a lot of there's melasma, then there's all the other forms of sun damage that we see, and of course, skin cancers that develop over time. So it's so important to make sure you're protecting yourself from that cumulative exposure. Yes, sunburns in childhood are one of the big triggers of increasing the risks down the road of developing skin cancer and all the signs of skin aging. But it is really this cumulative low dose exposure where you're just walking to your car, walking a few blocks, you don't think about putting sunscreen on. That's going to activate the melanocytes and get your melasma going and prevent it from fading and also do all of the harm down the road.
So be religious with your sunscreen. And then when it comes to our skincare, what ingredients should we be reaching for? What should we be using?
Some of my favorite ingredients are all tyrosinase inhibitors. So things like tranexamic acid, cetyl tranexamic mesylate is a newer form that's out on the market. It's actually in our Skincare Junkie Discoloration Fade Wand. It penetrates the skin deeper, so you're treating that hyperpigmentation at multiple depths, and it's very well tolerated and safe. Kojic acid is another favorite. It's a Japanese mushroom derived enzyme that helps to, and when I talk about tyrosinase inhibitors, tyrosinase is a critical enzyme in the pathway to developing melanin in the skin. So if we block that enzyme, you're no longer going to be forming the pigmentation and you'll allow your spots to fade. So tyrosinase inhibitors, tranexamic acid, like I said, kojic acid does it. There are several others. Hydroquinone is a really well-known skin, lightener, bleaching agent. And while it does work very well, and it comes in both prescription and non-prescription concentrations, this one has some questionable, you can read that it can be carcinogen. We don't really have good enough data to suggest that it is perfectly safe, but it does work very well. Vitamin C is another one. Niacinamide can help. Those are some of my favorites. So look for ingredients and then make sure you're avoiding irritants because it is an inflammatory process. You want to keep the inflammation on your skin down as much as possible. So avoid fragrances, known allergens, and so forth.
You mentioned skincare junkies, Fade Wand, which is one of my favorite products. And I like it because you can take it with you everywhere and it's in stick form. So it's easy to be consistent. That's another thing is being consistent, right? If you just treat your,
Absolutely.
yes.
And that's what's so frustrating about melasma because you just can't, for someone who's prone to it, you know how frustrating it is. You go outside, you make the mistake once, and that process is triggered again, and suddenly those spots are darker. And so it's so frustrating. I have so many patients on a day goes by that I'm not treating someone with melasma and other forms of hyperpigmentation. And you really do have to be so religious about it. So most of us don't leave the house without brushing our teeth. It's that same sort of thing. Have your discoloration skincare products right there on on your vanity, your bathroom counter when you are getting ready in the day. Your sunscreen will go on after that, and you just don't leave the house without them on.
I get really upset when I hear someone say, or marketing claims that say that you can cure melasma because I'm like, I've tried everything. If there was a cure, I would have already found it. So, how close can you get to really treating it?
Yeah, exactly. You're not curing it. There is no cure. It's like many of these inflammatory skin conditions that occur and that we see as patients and as dermatologists. And but you can treat, and you just do have to be really religious about it. Stay on top of it. Make sure you're doing your everyday sun protection, and use these ingredients that we talked about, the tranexamic acid, the kojic acid, and so forth. That really will help in this. They're just part of the armamentarium against the melasma and against the hyperpigmentation. Just got to be religious and, get a hat. Sunglasses will help for the areas over here. Lip, as you mentioned, another really common area. Just got to be really religious about it.
And what in-office treatments do you recommend? What really helps?
So I love Clear and Brilliant for this. I treat many patients with either Clear and Brilliant or LaserMD, which are non-ablative, sort of gentler forms of Fraxa laser, if you will, which is really, that sort of name is well known. They help to remove some of the pigmentation on the surface. And then I like to treat with an in-office tranexamic acid application. So that helps to get down into the little channels that the laser has created. And again, deeply block that tyrosinase enzyme.
And that's in topical form, right? The tranexamic acid.
It's a little solution that I sort of massage into the skin right after the laser treatment. Laser treatments can be very helpful, but there's the issue is that a laser treatment can also make you more sensitive to the sun. So it can trigger melasma, and the inflammation can also trigger melasma. So it's really important that you use one of these gentle lasers. Go to someone who has done this many, many times, is very experienced in treating patients with melasma so that you're not going to set yourself back, which I've seen complications of in the past. Patients will come to me saying, "Hey, I did this. My whatever told me this is the laser for it, and now I'm worse off. My patches have gotten darker over time," and again, adding to the frustration. So yes, the in-office treatments can be really fabulous in combination with your at-home care, but make sure you're doing the right type of treatment and being really, really good about sun protection after the fact.
And what about oral tranexamic acid? We've heard a lot about that in recent years, and people seem to be having success with that. Who's a good candidate for that, and what should people know?
It's really something to talk about with not only your dermatologist or who's prescribing it and your primary care, because there are patients that can be great for it. It does have digital side effects. And so you want to make sure that you are a good candidate for it. So I always recommend have this conversation if it's something you're interested in and you certainly may well benefit from, especially if best thing to do is always start with topical care.
Mhm.
Topical care, if it's not working because you get a lower cost treatment options there, think about in-office treatments. And then sort of as a last resort, if you will, if you're not seeing the results that you are hoping for, then start talking to your physicians about whether you are a candidate for the oral form of tranexamic acid, which certainly can help.
It's never just one thing, right? It's a combination of a few modalities and what you're doing at home and staying out of the sun. It's really something you have to stay on top of all year round.
Yep, and staying cool. So, there's a heat wave on the East Coast right now in Florida, we're in California. It's very, very tricky to avoid heat, but there are certain measures you can take to avoid that trigger. We've got sun protection, being really, really religious about that, doing good skincare, but then how do you avoid the heat? Can help any fans. I know there's people, I have patients who walk around with little fans when they know they're going to be out in a hot environment, and hard to avoid that. But the good news is if you have good skincare that is preventing the pigmentation, even if you are in a warmer climate, you'll be fighting it while you're exposed to those temperatures.
And what is one underrated tip that you wish more people would know about treating their melasma?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Underrated. It may just be knowing the right ingredients and making sure that you are avoiding irritants and knowing that there are these multiple triggers so that, that wasn't one tip, that was many, but just kind of understanding, really understanding what is melasma and why is it happening. If you understand the why, you're better set up to learn how to treat and prevent it.
And then just to be clear, melasma is a type of hyperpigmentation, right? Because I use those terms interchangeably, and I know a lot of people do. So, just for our viewers, how do you know that this is melasma?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and even sometimes to the dermatologist can be a little difficult to try in certain cases. And sometimes there's a combination. But melasma generally like I've said, it's a chronic inflammatory skin condition that leads to pigmentation on the skin. We know that there is a strong UV association, and there's also a likely estrogen association. So it is much more common in women, and it is more common, although it happens in all skin tones, it can be more common in certain groups. The South Americans there are certain areas in South America where there are really large populations that are very prone to melasma. So that's one group that we know of. We're learning more and more about it as time goes on, but it is one of the forms of hyperpigmentation. And this one happens to be a chronic inflammatory skin condition form. There's also sunspots. There's post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, like the marks you get after a rash or a bug bite or old acne marks. There are all sorts of different pigmentation, whether it's freckles or lentigines, which are just, benign sunspots and so forth.
Yeah, and so since there is a hormonal component, some people might not experience this form of hyperpigmentation until pregnancy or later, like me, when you're perimenopausal and your hormones are a little bit off balance, but it can happen later in life, right?
Yeah, so it can develop later in life. You can have hormonal fluctuations, as we all do over time, whether that is, like you said, periods, but, pregnant, on birth control, taking external hormones, which you may be doing later on in life, many different causes. But when you have elevated estrogen levels, is when we do tend to see more of a propensity to melasma.
Wonderful. Well, it sounds like I will always be doing many, many things to keep my melasma in check, but it's very helpful to have the knowledge and know it's not something that I'm doing, but it can be prevented.
Absolutely. Though that comes up a lot. What am I doing wrong? And it's not that. It's just one of these genetic propensities. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.